Great, thanks Jackie. Hi everyone, welcome to the third webinar of our 6-part series that Sparrowly Group are delivering on behalf of Hawkesbury City Council. Today's webinar is on business planning fundamentals. For those that I haven't met, my name is Giovanna and I'll be your presenter today. And I'll be joined with me on support is Jackie.
Hi.
So for those I don't know, I'm the Managing Director of Sparrowly Group. I have over 20 years experience in building and scaling businesses and their brands. Sparrowly Group has been working with a number of businesses in growing the region for the last few years now. And more recently, we've been running the Business Bounce Back mentoring program supported by Hawkesbury City Council. We're really pleased to see the incredible results that are coming from these businesses on the program. So just some housekeeping before we begin. Your video and audio has been disabled for the presentation. The session will be recorded and will be sent to all of those who have registered as follow-up, as well as going up on the Hawkesbury Business Hub website. This will include the presentation slides, and we welcome you to revisit the recording yourself and share it with colleagues and watch it on demand. Now, if you have any questions throughout, please pop them in the chat box, which you can open at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll collate them together and go through them at the end of the webinar. Also, if you're having any technical issues, also use the chat box and we'll respond to you directly. Now, so that you can concentrate fully on the information ahead, I'm going to turn off my video and I'll turn it back on for question time. Okay, so let's break down what we're covering today. We're going to touch on some common business planning mistakes, and then we're really going to unpack the business model canvas and its 9 elements across desirability, feasibility, and viability. Importantly, this session is about getting your thoughts out of your head and into a practical plan that can build from as you grow into a sustainable business, and one that can withstand the tough times. Now, we want to do this by giving you a shared language and tools for describing, visualizing, assessing, and if need be, changing your business model. So let's get into it. If you haven't heard of the business model canvas before, don't be scared. Let me introduce you to it. The canvas we'll be looking at was developed by software company Strategizer. It's essentially a business model which describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. It's open source, so what that means is that anybody can use it. There are loads of books and articles written about it and how to use it. We can add in a couple of links when you get your follow-up email as well. Now, we use it at Sparrowly Group for our own business and also the organisations that we consult and the businesses that we mentor. But essentially, the business model canvas describes the rationale of how a business creates, delivers, and captures that value. Too often we have seen business plans that are long yet so vague and don't really tell the reader anything useful or concrete. It's just not practical. I'm sure someone in your business journey has said to you at times, have you got a business plan? And you've either had a, oh crap moment, or yeah, I do have one, but I never look at it moment, or I have no idea how to or where to start. Now, detailed business plans are important if they are relevant and practical, but oftentimes it's a business owner thinking that they're doing the right thing, downloading the government template for business plans and then filling in the blanks without really thinking through the process or research and just being very robotic around that. So this process that we're about to show you is an important part of the planning process and one of the fundamental steps to ensuring your business planning is watertight. So first of all, let's talk about some common business planning mistakes that we've seen over the years, which you really need to avoid if your business is going to be a viable long-term proposition. Some of these include having unrealistic financial projections, not defining the reader. Is it internal only or external for investors or government support? Not doing enough research, hiding your weaknesses. If you're not strong in a certain area, it's important to highlight this as part of what you will do to help counteract this and help your business to thrive. Including too much information, that it's just simply waffle and has no real relevance or practical application. No focus on your competition. Superficial definition of target customers. And for the record, everyone is not your customer. Underestimating business risks, or worse, thinking none exists. There is risk in everyday life and running a business. And finally, not having a plan in the first place. In plotting out your business model canvas, it allows you to get clear on your business promise. Right, now let's take a closer look at the canvas. There are 9 boxes, or you can call them building blocks, which identify the desirability, the feasibility, and the viability of your business. We start with the right-hand boxes of customer segments, value proposition, channels, and customer relationships. Basically what this means is, does the customer want it? Then we move to the left-hand boxes of key resources, key activities, and key partners. And what this means is, can we build it? And then the remaining 2 boxes are the revenue streams and the cost structures, and they look to the viability of your business and answers the question of, should we build it? Now you're going to receive this and some templates to work through as part of the resources. So if you're madly scribbling down notes, don't worry, it's all coming to you and will be packaged up. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to go through box by box. First of all, let's start with the customer segments. These are basically the different groups of people or organisations we aim to reach and serve. In most cases, you may define one or several large or small customer segments. As a business owner, you will need to make a conscious decision on the segments which you want to serve and those that you can't. You just can't be all things to everybody. Customer groups can represent separate segments if their needs require or justify a distinct user, they're reached through different channels, they require different types of relationships, you offer different value propositions, and we'll get to value propositions shortly, or they're willing to pay for different services. In our Marketing Fundamental webinar that we ran a fortnight ago, we spoke about really identifying who your customer is at an individual level, and we used persona development. Now it's important here to have that persona identified as a segment. We will share that link of that recording and resources from that marketing webinar in the follow-up email that you'll get tomorrow. So again, if you've missed that one, don't worry. We'll make sure we give you all those resources too. But let's just say, for example, your persona, her name, let's call her Jane. Jane's 35, she's a 35-year-old mother based in Sydney. And she's looking for family-friendly accommodation not too far away. Then if you're an accommodation provider, let's say, you would have one customer segment of which Jane would fall into it, and that customer segment would be known as families. If you're a landscaper or small business gardener, one of your customer segments may be new home builds or seniors living at home. All right, let's move to the value proposition now. So we covered this too in the webinar a fortnight ago, and as I said, don't worry, we'll make sure that we give you all those resources so you can catch up. But essentially, the value proposition is the products and services that create value for a specific customer segment. Or, in layman's terms, it's the promise. What's your promise? It's the reason why customers choose you over someone else and is one of the most critical things to get right. Once you've understood your audience and their needs, it's important to make sure that your promise or the value proposition is meaningful, clear, and helps solve the needs of your customers. What's the product or service you're offering, and how does it meet the needs of and create value for your customers? This is what your brand is and what your customer wants to hear. A value proposition creates value for your customer segments or your audience segments through a distinct mix of elements catering to the segment needs. Values may be quantitative, for example, price, speed of service, or qualitative, for example, design or customer experience. Moving on to channels now, and this is, we're still in the right-hand part of the business model canvas, so we're talking about the desirability. There are ways, essentially the channels are the ways in which we communicate and reach the customer segments to deliver the value proposition. They are the main customer touch points which play a role in the customer journey. Channels serve several functions, and that in delivering a value proposition to customers, raising awareness among customers about your business's products and services, allowing customers to purchase something, helping customers to evaluate your promise or your value proposition, and providing post-purchase customer support. So channels can be both direct and indirect, and owned or partner channels. Channels have 5 distinct phases and can cover some of them, and they include awareness, evaluation, purchase, delivery, and after sales. From these channels, we then move into the customer relationships created with your customer segments. So the 4 boxes of customer segments, value proposition, channels, and customer relationships work collaboratively and overlap to form the desirability. And they're very much, I guess if you look at it, they're like an interconnected arrows in each box. Customer relationships can be driven by the following motivations of customer acquisition, customer retention, and boosting sales. So that's essentially your upselling. So another way to look at it is using terms like get, keep, and grow. How are you getting your customers? How are you keeping your customers? And how are you growing your customers? As a business, you need to determine the types of relationships you want to establish with each customer segment. So each relationship formed based on your business model will deeply influence their customer experience. Some examples of customer relationships may include personal assistance, self-service, loyalty program, and you know what? Nothing beats good old-fashioned, intuitive and consistent customer service. All right, now we're going to move into the revenue streams. Essentially, that's the strategies used to extract value from your customer segments. Based on your identified customer segments, you'll be able to identify what they're truly willing to pay based on your value proposition. So research and constantly talking to your customers is really important so you can learn and constantly refine across your business planning. So a business model can involve 2 different revenue streams. Firstly, one-time customer payment transactional revenues. Secondly, recurring revenues resulting from ongoing payments like a monthly subscription, say, to deliver a value proposition or provide post-purchase customer support. Each revenue stream may have different pricing mechanisms such as fixed list prices, volume dependency, market dependency, bargaining, auctioning, or yield management. So for those of you who don't know what yield management is, that's basically optimizing off the base revenue, or otherwise known as the cream on top. So some examples of ways to generate revenue streams include licensing, advertising, subscription fees, usage fees, asset sale, and leasing. Next up are the key things that make your business work. So your resources, activities, and partners. Starting with key resources, they're the most important assets that you need to operate your business. Every business model needs resources. So they can be physical, financial, intellectual, or human. Physical resource are assets such as buildings, vehicles, machines, distribution networks, manufacturing facilities, point of sale systems, and other systems. Financial resources are those that include cash flow and lines of credit. Intellectual resources are the things that make your business yours. So these include proprietary knowledge, otherwise known as IP, brand, partnership, customer databases, patents, and copyrights. So these are incredibly important components of having a strong business model. Finally, human resources, which are required for every business. And they're prominent in certain business models in knowledge-intensive or creative industries. So for example, with Sparrowly Group, because we are a management consultancy, we have a major focus around the intellectual resources and the human resource element. The different key resources are needed depending on the type of business model, and they can be owned by the company or leased or acquired from key partners. So let's move to key activities now. So just to recap, we're currently sitting in the feasibility part of the business model canvas. The key activities are those that you need to do to make your business operate. It's often the one part of planning where this detail is overlooked, but it's really a critical element to successful business planning and operations. Like key resources, these activities are required to create and offer your value proposition, reach your markets across channels, maintain customer relationships, and earn revenue. Key activities can be either production or problem solving. Essentially, these are things that you and your business and your staff need to do in the business. Production activities are those which relate to designing, making, and delivering a product or service in quantities and quality. Whereas problem solving activities are those which relate to coming up with new solutions to customer problems. And the not so exciting part of the business, and what a lot of business owners love to avoid, are the administrative tasks. They need to be captured here too. HR, invoicing and bookkeeping, marketing, experience development, maintenance, and cleaning tasks. Key partners, now referred to the network of suppliers and the partnerships you need to make your business work. So some examples include strategic alliances between non-competitors, cooperation, the strategic partnerships between competitors, joint ventures to develop new business, and buyer-supplier relationships to assure a reliable supply chain. Partners are really important to optimize your business model, reduce risk, and acquire resources. All right, the final box, and which forms part of viability alongside revenue streams, which we've already covered, are the cost structures. So that is the costs incurred to operate the model. Also, a key element of business planning that is often overlooked. Creating and delivering value, maintaining customer relationships, and generating revenue all incur costs. These can be calculated relatively easily once key resources, activities, and partners are confirmed. Generally, there are two cost structures. There's cost-driven and value-driven. Cost-driven business models focus on minimizing costs wherever possible. For example, let's take Jetstar or Tiger, budget airlines. Value-driven are those businesses that are less concerned with the cost implications of a business model and instead focus on value creation. For example, a luxury resort or retail brands such as Louis Vuitton, Gucci. You want to look at your cost structures as either fixed or variable. Fixed costs are those that remain the same despite the value of the goods or services produced. So, for example, salaries and rent. Variable costs are those that vary proportionally with the volume of goods and services that are produced. There are also cost advantages that a business enjoys as its output expands, and these are called economies of scale. You may have heard that before. And economies of scope, which are the cost advantages due to a larger scope of operations. And you'll be interested to know that we really do value and put a lot of importance around this cost structure piece because it's where a lot of businesses fall over. So the next two webinars in this series are dedicated around knowing your numbers. You'll also get information around for those webinars when in the follow-up email. So these are the 9 boxes of the business model canvas complete. What we've got here is the business model canvas and a specific example for Airbnb. So it's not just a tool that small businesses use, large businesses like Airbnb use it as well. So you can see here over in the desirability boxes, we have the customer segments of guests and hosts. And then they have their micro segmentation that sits under there. But it's not always about the end consumer. Obviously, they've got the end consumer and the guest, but then they've also got that intermediary consumer or customer segment in the host. Then we've got the customer relationships there, and in terms of, you know, for hosts and then also for guests, the channels in which their customer segments use and to communicate, and then of course the value proposition and the promise. Then we move over to the feasibility, and you'll see then the key activities that they undertake, their key resources, and also their key partners. So it's really interesting here. And the key partners, they've got their hosts, of course, but their hosts are also a customer segment as well. So to note, you know, in some instances, council, for example, may be a key partner, but they also may be a customer segment in terms of, you know, who you need to be targeting and communicating to. And then finally, around that viability, you'll see there that they've filled in that cost structure and then the revenues. Now, sitting behind this Airbnb is much more detailed business planning, but in the first instance, this is the tool that they use as well to get everything out of your, you know, your head and onto paper. All right, so let's recap. This concludes the breakdown of the business model canvas. Quick recap on what we covered off today. First of all, avoiding business planning mistakes. Second of all, not overcooking it, and just, it's all about getting, you know, very clear on paper an outline of your business, because a lot of the time it's sitting up here in your head, and that's where a lot of problems start. And then finally, you know, as I mentioned, getting those thoughts out. And we want to, you know, we want to help you get it into a practical plan. Not everyone's going to need a 20, 30-page business plan, but you need some structure in order to have a successful business, particularly one that can withstand crises. All right. So as we mentioned a few times throughout the webinar, as we do every week, tomorrow morning we'll be sending a follow-up email to you with all the related materials so that you can take these learnings and apply them to your business. This includes the business model canvas template tool, and that way you can use it to help you, to help guide you, and we'll have all the support material as well. And as we've mentioned before, when you receive that email, feel free to forward that email to other business owners that you think will benefit from the information. Now, when you go to these links that we send you to your resources and tools, this is essentially for you to download and to put into your operational business toolkit for now and for later. Thanks so much for joining us today. We know how important your time is, particularly as a small business. We're one, so we totally get it. Before we finish up, Jackie, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. So firstly, is my value proposition part of my brand?
Yeah, really great question. Now, oftentimes when people talk about brand, they think the brand is the logo and the logo only. A brand is made up of so many elements, but essentially your value proposition or your promise is the foundation for the brand. So without that, you have no position and no story to tell your customers. So oftentimes people will race to think they need to do all their colors and all the bright and shiny, but they're not actually clear in terms of what it is that they're offering to their customers. And I'm sure you've seen it before, where you've seen the bright and shiny elements of the logos, the font colors, the website, and you go, oh my God, who are they talking to? What were they thinking when they designed that? It's because they haven't gotten clear on their value proposition.
Yeah, great. So the next question, so how do I start with my costs to make sure that my revenue stream is right?
Yeah, really great question. And I think you'll find this will really be unpacked in detail over the next 2 webinars. But our advice is that you should always start with your expenses first when you're doing your business planning. And this is not just for the first time when you're starting a business. This is every year, when you're working out your budgets for the year, always start with the expenses. So the fixed expenses and the variable expenses, because you need to understand what it actually costs to open your doors, so that you can then work out your pricing structures and then test those pricing structures with the market as well. Next week, when Ben takes you through Know Your Numbers Part 1, he's going to be talking to spreadsheets and how to really look at the revenue and the expenses line, and give you some great tips on how to do that without it feeling so overwhelming.
Yeah, next week's webinar is going to be great, so make sure you register for that. Just another question. So how do I decide what channels to be on?
It's not about you deciding what channels to be on. It's about understanding your customer segments and what channels they're on. I've heard it so many times from businesses saying, I don't like Instagram, I'm not into it. But you're not the customer. At the end of the day, if your customers are all on Instagram, for example, that's where you need to be. You basically need to fish where there's, you need to fish where the fish are swimming, essentially. So it's really important to understand your customers and research. When you're doing a first pass of this, this is not a fait accompli when you do it the first time. The more you talk to your customers and you learn, that's where it will help you then also understand many parts of the business model canvas, but specifically in this instance, the channels. So many businesses from an online perspective, or even if you go, say, to a doctor's surgery, they'll ask the questions, where did you hear about us? And you'll see like social media, Google, word of mouth, and then you're normally asked to add in the referral, etc. That very simple task is about learning where their customers are coming from and what are the channels that they're using.
Yeah, thanks for that. So how do I choose my partners?
Yeah, great question. So essentially your partners are about group businesses or people that are complementary to your business and help add value and help support to grow your business. So that's really, really important. But likewise, partnerships, it's a two-way relationship. What value are you adding to them? And so it can't always be about you. What value are you adding to them, and what value can they add to you? So it's about how do you build that complementary and collaborative relationship.
Yeah. And just one final question, Giovanna. So what's more important, getting or keeping customers?
I will always say keeping customers. If you've had your doors open for a while now, obviously if you're a new business, you need to get the customers in the first place. But so many businesses focus on constantly getting, otherwise known as acquisition marketing, and that's fine. But if you're so busy acquiring, how can you look after the customers that you've got and nurture them? So a really good example that completely gets up my goat are gyms, right? Gyms are constantly recruiting for members, constantly trying to acquire new members. But once you're in, most of them can't give two hoots about you. And the retention, if you do some reading on this, there's plenty of stats around this. The retention rate on gyms is really, really low, right? And then retention in terms of members that then end up then cancelling their membership, but then also those that just stop going to the gym. Now, those ones, the members that just stop going to the gym but still have their membership, that's free money to the gym. And so as far as the gym is concerned, they don't give two hoots. But that's not the way to do business. And so my recommendation is always about retention. Look after your people, and they will absolutely reward, because if you are looking after your people, they will be advocates for life. And there's nothing beats, as we mentioned before, good old-fashioned customer service and customer care.
Great, thank you. That's it for the question time. So I'll pass back over to Giovanna.
Great, thank you, Jackie. Thanks, everybody. Now, look, please feel free to get in touch if you have any more questions. My contact details can be found here on the screen. As mentioned, our next webinar in the series will be hosted next Wednesday on Knowing Your Numbers Part 1, which will focus on getting you comfortable with spreadsheets at 11:30 a.m. We'll send the details to register for it in the follow-up email that will hit your inboxes tomorrow, as well as a sneak peek of our upcoming webinars, which you can also register for. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. See you later, everybody.